Daniel Heinsius was one of the most famous scholars of the Dutch Renaissance. His youth and student years. Heinsius was born in Ghent. The troubles of the Spanish War drove his parents to settle first at Veer in Zeeland, then to England, next at Ridgewick and lastly at Vlissingen. In 1596, being already remarkable for his attainments, he was sent to the University of Franeker to study law under Henricus Scotanus. In 1598 he settled at Leiden for the nearly 60 remaining years of his life. There he studied under Joseph Scaliger, and there he met Marnix de St. Aldegond, Janus Douser, Paulus Merula, Hugo Grotius and others. He was soon taken into the society of these celebrated men as their equal. Professor at Leiden University, his proficiency in the classical languages won the praise of all the best scholars of Europe, and offers were made to him, but in vain, to accept honorable positions outside Holland. He soon rose in dignity at the University of Leiden. In 1602 he started lecturing. In 1603 he was appointed Professor of Poetics, in 1605 Professor of Greek, and at the death of Merula in 1607 he succeeded that illustrious scholar as the fourth librarian of Leiden University Library. In 1612 he was appointed as Professor Politices, the world's first chair in political science. As a classical scholar, Heinsius edited many Latin and Greek classical as well as patristic authors, amongst others, Hesiod, Theocritus, Bion of Smyrna and Moschus, Aristotle's Ars Poetica, Clement of Alexandria and Terentius. He brought out the epistles of Joseph Scaliger in 1627. Especially influential was his treatise De Tragica Constitution. It was a personal and easily accessible version of what Aristotle had written on tragedy in his Poetics. A revised edition appeared in 1643 with a slightly different title, De Constitution Tragödie. In 1609 he printed a first edition of his Latin orations. Ever more voluminous new editions appeared until the final edition of 1642, which comprised 35 orations. The collection ended with the ironical Laus Pediculi, which was translated in English by James Guittard in 1634. Latin poetry. Heinsius first drew attention to himself as a Latin poet with his Senecan tragedy Auricus, Sive Libertas Sorcia. In 1607-08 he wrote another tragedy, Herodes Infanticida, which was published only in 1632. He was, however, especially prolific in writing elegies, of which a large part was dedicated to his love for a girl called Rosso. A first collection appeared in 1603. Ever larger and revised collections of his poemata, also containing other genres, saw the light regularly. By 1628 he had contributed a Latin poem praising the renowned fencer Gerard de Bow to the front of his book Académie de l'Esprit. Dutch poetry. In 1601 he published, under the pseudonym of Theocritus Aganda, Queris Quid Sit Amor? The first emblem book in Dutch. It was re-edited in 1606-07 with the title Emblemata Amatoria. A second emblem book, Spiegel van Doorluchtigvrouwen, was published in 1606. Heinsius also experimented in Dutch poetry after classical models. His efforts were collected by his friend Petrus Scriverius and published as Nederduitse Poemata in 1616. They were greatly admired by Martin Opens, who, in translating the poetry of Heinsius, introduced the German public to the use of the rhyming Alexandrine. His later years. In 1617 he married Irmgard Rutgers, sister of Janus Rutgesius, one of Scaliger's favorite pupils. They had two children, Nicholas, who was to become a famous Latin poet and book collector, and Elizabeth. At the Synod of Dort, Heinsius was secretary on behalf of the States General. Afterwards he paid more attention to theology and worked on the text of the Greek New Testament for Elsevier's edition. In these years he also wrote a large didactic poem, De Contemptu Mortis, which has a Christian stoical content. His wife died in 1633, and Heinsius got into a conflict with Claudius Salmasius, who was appointed as his colleague in 1631. He became more and more lonely and embittered. He stopped lecturing in 1647. He died in The Hague, aged 74, and was buried in Leiden. He collected some Greek manuscripts, e.g. Codex 155.